Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this another Johnny Vedmore read through with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore, and we are going on a special journey today, a journey that has been years in the making. In actual fact, within the article I'm about to read you, a load of my previous work have intersected, and I came across some information that was extremely troublesome, worrying, and which I'd been looking for a while. Yes, I've been looking into the background of this very rich man, very powerful man, the technocrat of the future, Elon Musk. I'd already done some research on his family history, on his first businesses, on even revealed that he had once worked for Microsoft, though that's not spoken of nowadays. And I had been looking for a connection, one connection in particular. That one with Jeffrey Epstein. We've seen the picture of Elon Musk with Ghislaine Maxwell at some party where he's photobombed. This irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. What if I could find a photo of Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein in the same room? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And I did. But it didn't stop there. Once I had found this photo, it led to an unraveling. And a load, like I said, a load of my other work intersected during this unraveling. And before you know it, we were going down a rabbit hole, my friends. And it got to this article that I'm going to read to you today, Musk and Epstein, the Third Culture, which is about Elon Musk's training under a Jeffrey Epstein-funded course on how to manipulate the masses, the minds of the masses, how to use behavioral control to understand choice architecture and manipulate it without the people knowing they're being manipulated. Make people choose. Make the masses choose. What if I told you that you could go back in time and discover when the heads of Google, YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitter, whichever one you want, Microsoft, what if I told you they all got together in a room? Very small group of people, 8 to 10 people, and they said, hey, we're going to train you guys on how to manipulate people into making the decisions you want so that later on in the future, we can censor whatever we want and we can get people to think whatever we want just by manipulating them and nudging them. What if we could do that? And that's what we're going to look at today. This is an extraordinary story, like I say, years in the making. So without further ado on this Johnny Vedmore read-through, let's go to my site here, newspaste.com. Yes, newspaste.com. And it's very exciting to show you around. The place is looking fresh and pink, a bit neon here. The top, of course, we've got the different drop-down menus for the series. So you've got my Schwab series, Epstein 101 series, Pottinger series, Youngkerman series, Blackhand series, other articles. In actual fact, parts of my Schwab series intersect with this article. Part of my Epstein 101 series intersect with this article. I think there may be even a couple of stray Pottinger parts. Parts of the Youngkerman series. Youngkerman is actually in business with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and was in business with Jeffrey Epstein and flew on the Lolita Express twice. So she comes up in it. And some others, including David Shaw and the rise of Jeff Bezos. And other ones too, the Welcome Five, the Proximal Origin. They're all very interesting articles, and of course this last article I wrote, which was Clinton and Blair, the Third Way Dossier. This is actually the third series. It's called the third series, not the third series I've done. I mean, it's the third series, like the Third Way and the Third Culture. Without further ado, let's get across. As you see, similar to that other picture over here in the Third Way, with the triangle of power in between a statue-like image of Blair and Clinton, We got the same here with the third culture and these statue-like images of Epstein and Musk. And it's, like I say, an extraordinary story. I've been looking forward to telling people about this one, so here we are. Musk and Epstein, the third culture dossier. How Elon Musk was trained in psychological manipulation via a Jeffrey Epstein funded program. By me, Johnny Vedmore, for Newspaste, my site. You can go to newspaste.com, type Newspaste into any search engine, should be the top result, and you can go diving down the rabbit hole. And I do note at the bottom of here, I do say this article contains over 20 hours, and it really does. It's probably about a day's worth of original media content directly related to the subject matter. Support this kind of deep investigative journalism over here, and there's a link to my support page because, of course, I am an independent. I am an independent. In 2011, a small group of extremely influential people met to discuss the future of humanity. Among their ranks were Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Nathan Myhrvold, Sergey Brin, and the infamous paedophile child trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. But this was not the first time these powerful and affluent technophiles had met to determine how best to control society. For many years, I've been unwittingly preparing to write this piece, and a bulk of my previous investigations will intersect with this article. For those who aren't aware, I have written extensively about Jeffrey Epstein's influence on leading politicians and scientists. I have revealed previously unknown details behind the rise of Jeff Bezos. I have mapped out the history of modern globalism, and I have written about the political influences behind such infamous leaders as Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. In my Newshound series, I have covered the history of Elon Musk, his family life, his early businesses, as well as his more hidden ties to Microsoft. I've also examined the psychological nudge units adopted by Obama and Cameron, respectively, which were designed by the father of behavioral economics, Richard Thaler, and his colleague and co-author Cass Sunstein. And recently I revealed Eric Weinstein's work for the UN designing the current unfettered immigration we have seen happen all around the globe, along with his participation in EDGE when it was almost fully funded by Jeffrey Epstein. However, I wasn't expecting all these investigations to merge into one investigation eventually. Since I began reporting on Epstein and his accomplices in 2019, I have been searching for something rather specific. I have been trying to find people with previously unknown or unrevealed connections to the sex offending intelligence operative. In doing so, I've been hopping around the internet archives on the hunt for concrete evidence that powerful people such as Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk met in person with Jeffrey Epstein. Although there were many rumors which suggested as much, or which suggest as much, finding definitive proof of these powerful people all in the same room at the same time has been challenging. However, that what I wasn't expecting was to find was Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk being trained to manipulate the masses via a Jeffrey Epstein funded program. But alas, here we are, prepared to look behind the curtain of power as we investigate more than just Musk and Bezos's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to discover how an elite psychological operations unit trained the future technocrat elite on how to manipulate our lives, our societies, and most of all, our minds. The 4 factors for control. Those who want to take control or take over and control society require 4 main components: a paradigm shift in technology, a coherent political social science, a loyal leadership group, and, most importantly, political consent. Historically, many great thinkers have tried and failed to find some form of political panacea for all of our ills, and it is often a novel technological paradigm shift which has been the most effective way to drive real change. Any emerging technology capable of revolutionizing certain aspects of our society can be implemented in several ways. Future technologies are almost always imagined and predicted decades before they arise, and those who understand the implications of a paradigm shift in technology can also seek to control its evolution, implementation, and its accessibility. Technological paradigm shift. The past is littered with technological paradigm shifts. The wheel, the road, bronze, iron, and steel, steam trains, gunpowder, dynamite, and the atomic bomb have all had a massive impact on how human society has developed. Every time such technology has emerged in the past, our society's infrastructure has been irreversibly redrawn, and this has led to people's lives being shaken up like it's a game. The vast majority of humans, as the pieces in this game, get redistributed around the board in preparation for the proverbial next level, and we again find ourselves on the precipice of such a predictable change. Here is one of the slides. As you see, Johnny Vedmore explores the World Economic Forum's megacities training given to their young global leaders. It's actually me going through the training slides for the Young Global Leaders program. The world of tomorrow has already been extensively mapped out. For more than a half of a century, those in power have been designing the globalist megacity utopia where humanity becomes inextricably entangled with artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and various implantables. Every small group of very wealthy actors, a very small group of very wealthy actors have been in control of the design, implementation, and direction of the major technologies of the future. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin, and Elon Musk are four clear examples of the billionaire elite who have the ability to irrevocably change the course of humanity in many ways. Political social science. When faced with a technological shift into a new epoch, the prevailing establishment usually jumps at the opportunity to redesign society. They often adopt an experimental branch of political science which they think will best fit the developing paradigm. Adopting a social science which will hold firm in an ever-changing world is vital if those in power want to retain control over the emerging system. Within modern Western democracies, the preferred system of social governance has already been adopted. Whether you wanted it or not, the likes of Bill Clinton and Tony Blair have forced third-way politics, as imagined by Anthony Giddens, on America and Britain, with many other Western nations joining suit. Third-way ideology is essentially the ideological stepping stone which they intend to utilize to take us from democratic nation-states and on to a form of undemocratic multipolar globalism. In the case of third-way politics, we can see how the process unfolded. By the time Bill Clinton was running for president in 1992, he hadn't only adopted the third-way political science created by Giddens, but he was also preaching it from the political pulpit. At the same time, the future New Labour elite were in America and hanging on every word spoken by the likes of Anthony Giddens, Robert Reich, and Larry Summers. And here's my third way read through. So the read through for the article, The Third Way, which will explain all that. For instance, Yvette Cooper worked on the Bill Clinton campaign in 1992. Blair and Brown came back from trips to America during this period, and they attempted to push third-way politics onto the then Labour leader John Smith, while Ed Balls was studying under Robert Reich and Larry Summers at Harvard. Eventually, the Labour upstarts designed so-called New Labour Party and modelled it on the reformed New Democrats of Bill Clinton. Leadership group. To drive people in a new direction, social scientists must first successfully gain the king's ear. They must convince those who crave power but are yet to gain power that their brand new branch of political science is what must be adopted. Whether it's Klaus Schwab's brand of stakeholder capitalism or Anthony Giddens' third-wave politics, a young and aspiring leadership group must be recruited and trained to make it work. There are many examples of industrial leadership training programs, the most famous being the Forum for Young Global Leaders, originally the Global Leaders for Tomorrow program, run by the World Economic Forum. The first year of the latter program saw Tony Blair and Gordon Brown attend alongside Angela Merkel, Bill Gates, Nicolas Sarkozy, and many other potential young leaders who were later installed into power. Also in attendance alongside Blair and Brown was Larry Summers, who was another proponent of third wave politics and an Epstein associate, who was appointed Undersecretary of International Affairs of United States Department of Treasury under President Bill Clinton's administration in actually the same year. Here is the unauthorized history of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader, where I go back to the Kissinger International Seminar, which it was based on, and how eventually we got to the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders with funding, hidden funding from Henry Kissinger to his friend and protege, Klaus Schwab. The leadership training mill was not limited to the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders program. Blair and Brown had already been put through the US-run International Visitors Leadership Program, which originated out of a wartime operation set up by Nelson Rockefeller. The German Marshall Fund also runs multiple leadership courses from their Harvard base, which specifically target leadership candidates focused on European Russian affairs. These sorts of leadership programs are a way for state apparatus to instill future leaders with the socio-economic philosophy which best suits the chosen political paradigm of the ruling elite. Consent. The fundamental issue with creating radical political change isn't the difficulty of pursuing a small, tight-knit leadership or persuading a small, tight-knit leadership cabal to adopt a chosen brand of social science. The real issue is how to convince the majority of voters to cast their ballots for a newly developed and relatively untested social order. This is an especially pertinent problem when the chosen branch of social science doesn't initially benefit the wider population. To convince the electorate to vote for their suppression, the consequences must be obscured. This is another slide from the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders Training, and it's population demographics. As you see here, they actually, even on their own slides, training slides, they joke about population control and management, and they talk about a lot of these subjects within their training too. To enact real change, those in power don't only require newly emerging technologies, a freshly created social science, and a group of leaders hungry for power who are willing to adopt a new paradigm. They also require a way to enact behavioral change on the masses. The people who want to control society must be able to harness behavioral economics and the social psychology of the population they seek to enforce control over. Most importantly, they must have control over the means for propagating information. In this regard, we currently see the mainstream media being supplanted by social media platforms such as Facebook and X. The control of information is being in the same hands as those who control technology. The control of information being in the same hands as those who control technology should worry us all. This should increase exponentially once they head towards government. In this article, I will map out how the future technocrats were trained by the most prominent social and economic psychologists of the past 20 years to manipulate society via courses directly funded by Jeffrey Epstein. The intellectual divide. In the early 17th century, a German Rosicrucian pamphlet mentioned the Invisible College. This was a small meeting of noted scholars, which in the early years included the Irish natural philosopher Robert Boyle and the infamous English architect, mathematician, astronomer, and physicist Christopher Wren. This sort of meeting of minds continued later in the same century with the public of letters, which encouraged long-distance letter writing between the intellectual community. This was the intellectual community revolutionizing how they communicated, spurred on by simple technological advances in writing tools and increased access to materials. This systematically encouraged and focused boost in intellectual networking gave rise to powerful organizations such as the Royal Society. In this read-through of the Welcome Five, you can learn more at the end of it about the Royal Society. The last part is actually about, and Elon Musk is in the Royal Society as well, so that's quite amusing. What came out of this maelstrom of elite societies, scholarly organizations, and information exchange groups hasn't simply had a massive impact on our understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology. Some of the most pernicious and dangerous developments in modern science have been in social theory, psychology, and economics. Since the days of the Invisible College, many elite intellectual organizations have been formed to meet the darker side of humanity's more nefarious ends, to push technological evangelism while controlling the pace of scientific development. While some of these organizations are created as a simple networking tool for certain sectors of scientific or political elite, others have been made manifest to push an agenda of control over the vast majority of the global population. One man who was inspired by the Invisible College of yesteryear was John Brockman. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Brockman set up a comprehensive and distinct modern iteration of these intellectual endeavors, which he eventually named Edge.org. Brockman was an extremely influential intellectual who had been the author editor of 19 books by 1995, which was the same year he published The Third Culture Beyond the Scientific Revolution. The latter work is extremely pertinent to this investigation in particular. Brockman was born in 1941, 7 months before America entered World War II. He began his career in 1965 working at the filmmaker's Cinematique. His mother was a registered nurse, while his father was a well-known flower broker known throughout Boston as the Carnation King. He grew up as a Jew in an Irish Catholic neighborhood where he and his brother Philip regularly got into fights. Philip was a scientist by trade, being of the initial groups employed by NASA to work on their space program and later retraining as a laser scientist in the 1970s. And here's the young John Brockman. Throughout the 1960s, John Brockman was directly influenced by the composer John Cage, who handed Brockman a copy of Norbert Wiener's book entitled Cybernetics during the 1965 New York dinner. According to Brockman, this began his obsession with what he called the cybernetic idea, while also influencing his desire to create more opportunities for intellectual encounters. In 1981, John Brockman founded the Reality Club, which saw a small group of mostly New York-based intellectuals meet for seminars on scientific topics trending amongst the intellectual establishment. The Reality Club's members included some of the greatest minds of the era, some of those who were attempting to push scientific frontiers to the max, such as Isaac Asimov, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, and Steven Pinker. Originally, Brockman created the Edge Foundation in 1988, but it was only once the World Wide Web had been properly developed that Edge found its home online. Edge soon became the focus of Brockman's attention, and the Reality Club was eventually reorganized into the Edge Foundation in January 1997. When the Edge Foundation Online with the Edge Foundation Online, John Brockman began to gather intellectuals. The first Edge meeting took place on the 21st of December 1996 and included a talk by Richard Dawkins entitled Science, Delusion, and the Appetite for Wonder. The scientists involved in the Reality Club and then Edge were some of the most sought-after thinkers of the day. The offer of networking with big names was already attracting further scientific celebrities, and Edge soon became the central to the plans of a certain New York money man named Jeffrey Epstein. Such networking wasn't only successful because the regular Edge attendees were so illustrious and well known. Much of Edge's popularity was down to John Brockman himself. Howard Rheingold, an American writer and teacher who specializes in cultural, social, and political implications of modern communication media, once said of Brockman, Brockman has an uncanny way of knowing people who know something important and a talent for putting those people together. And Rheingold's assertion was correct. Brockman had embedded himself within the deep state establishment from the 1960s onwards, and alongside his knack for predicting the future, he was always a successful top-flight interlocutor. Oh, yeah, wow. Oh, that made me sneeze. He was always a successful top-flight interlocutor. As a rule of thumb, Brockman surrounded himself with movers and shakers, and this took more of a scientific bent the closer he got to old age. For Brockman to understand which intellectuals he should entice, first he needed to decipher which scientific advancements were most pertinent to our unfolding reality. He wasn't the only one who craved such knowledge. A vast array of power players could see the obvious benefit of knowing the future that the reigning intellectual elite had already predicted to emerge. An edge was created to be a vehicle towards such ends. This is from the Guardian newspaper here. The man who runs the world's smartest website. Brockman was regularly lauded in the mainstream media throughout his career. However, Brockman's gatherings were designed to be pointedly different from most of the scientific societies of the past. Brockman was looking to create what he termed a third culture, to make scientific endeavor accessible to the wider intellectual community. To understand this, we must first examine Brockman's reasons for using the term third culture. In a 1959 book by C.P. Snow entitled The Two Cultures, the author explained how academics were split into two diverse intellectual groups. The academics within the humanities appeared to have little to no understanding or knowledge of those intellectuals from the traditional natural sciences, and vice versa. Snow's point was best summarized in this well-quoted part of his theses. A good many times I have been present at gatherings of people who, by the standards of the traditional culture, are thought highly educated, and who have, with considerable gusto, been expressing their incredulity at the illiteracy of scientists. Once or twice I have been provoked, and have asked the company how many of them could describe the second law of thermodynamics. The response was cold. It was also negative. Yet I was asking something which is the scientific equivalent of, have you read a work of Shakespeare's? To both Snow and Brockman, the general knowledge gap between social and natural scientists was a clear issue. Where both men saw the two groups as separate and distinct cultural entities, Brockman was intent on creating an alternative culture where they could synthesize and learn from each other. Although he claimed to have been the first to attempt to bridge this intellectual divide, many organizations had wrestled with the same issue. Brockman's intentions were clear. He knew that real power did not reside in one place, and that physics, biology, and chemistry could only have a significant impact on wider society if their importance were truly understood at a level where they could be implemented into policy. However hard he tried to overcome the divide between the intellectuals of these distinctly separate disciplines, Brockman's third culture became more of a mishmash of the elite scientific establishment. Regardless, his organization would have more than simple networking benefits for those involved. When Jeffrey met Elon, those who attended EDGE from the late 1990s were more than just scientists. Essentially, they were elite rock star status celebrity intellectuals who had already obtained vast wealth, power, and influence. Membership of EDGE became inextricably linked with the ability to generate vast wealth. Those directing EDGE weren't looking to fill up stadiums with scientists of every ilk. Instead, they wanted to fill up small meeting rooms with the ruling class of the elite scientific circles, and that's exactly what they did. This gave rise to EDGE's so-called billionaire's dinner. Most people who have looked into Epstein's case have seen images of Epstein attending a billionaire's dinner or two, alongside members of his operation, such as Sarah Kellen, and even of some of his well-known sex traffic victims, like Cindy Lopez. Many of the attendees at EDGE spoke highly of Epstein's intellect, even after he had been convicted, jailed, and publicly vilified. Steven Pinker was one of those regular attendees of Brockman's scientific gatherings who was roundly criticized in the media for his lack of regret for associating with Jeffrey Epstein, something of which Bill Gates was also guilty. And you could read one of my Epstein 101, Influence and Collusion. This is about his relationship with powerful people such as Bill Clinton, especially with Bill Clinton. However, once Epstein was arrested the second time and the case blew up in the mainstream media, many other regular Edge members either disassociated themselves publicly from the infamous Money Man or simply refused to comment to the press. Finding direct links between Epstein and the high profile elites who were proactively distancing themselves from him was always going to be difficult, especially as many of those involved can systematically censor the information. Those who were most keen to hide their connections to Jeffrey Epstein are in total control of the major social media and video platforms such as Google, YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook, and Amazon. I really mean top level. Edge was a perfect platform to allow Epstein to network with some of the most important people in science. This included some of the most influential people responsible for designing the technocratic panopticon taking shape around us. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, could have met Epstein on several occasions. Bezos was based in New York during the early 1990s, where he had been working his way up to become vice president of D.E. Shaw's hedge fund before he started setting up Amazon. D. Shaw's founder, David Shaw himself, had become an economic policy advisor for the Clinton administration when Mark Middleton and Jeffrey Epstein visited Bill Clinton's White House 17 times over 2 years. And you could go to UK column here and read my article, David Shaw and the Rise of Jeff Bezos, which will show you the true story behind the rise of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos was already turning in the same circles of the New York elite as Jeffrey Epstein. Bezos even entered into an online partnership with Sotheby's during the late 1990s, while Mega Group member and Epstein's main funder, Les Wexner, was on the board of the auction house. He also shared a love of Formula One racing with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and there were plenty of other opportunities where Bezos could have interacted with Epstein, but it was at Edge where a direct connection would most likely be found. Bezos attended Brockman's billionaire dinners almost religiously and was a regular participant in the courses Edge ran for their elite members. From the late 90s onwards, almost every top member of the future ruling technocratic establishment was involved with Edge. Bill Gates of Microsoft was a regular. Sergey Brin of Google was also a stalwart attendee. And the presence of Nathan Myhrvold of Intellectual Ventures should not be understated either. Larry Page and Eric Schmidt, who were also representing Google, were noted at Edge events alongside Anne Wojcicki of 23andMe, later on taking over YouTube, and Elon Musk, who was representing SpaceX and Tesla during the period he was attending Edge. Elon Musk has managed to remain distant and detached from the Epstein case. There is one photo in particular of Musk alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, which has been heavily shared online and is often used as proof of some sort of connection between Musk and Epstein. However, evidentially speaking, a single photo of Musk and Maxwell is pretty inconclusive. This is especially so seeing as Ghislaine Maxwell regularly photobombed elites at highbrow events as part of her repertoire. It was also reported by Business Insider that Maxwell asked Musk on that occasion to destroy the internet. This is the read-through of Lure, Grooming and Seduction, which explains about how Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's grooming operation worked and his proclivities towards children. We know that Elon Musk had a profile page on edge.org, and we also know that he had attended a few well-documented meetings. It may have been difficult to find concrete evidence that Elon Musk was in the same room as Jeffrey Epstein, but it was not impossible. Epstein and Musk were both at one exclusive Edge event in particular. Only about 25 people attended the Edge Billionaires Dinner of 2011, an event which took place just after Jeffrey Epstein had been released from prison for his initial conviction. It was revealed in BuzzFeed News article that Epstein was at the billionaires' dinner that year. He was even caught in a blurry photo at the event, which was also published in BuzzFeed News and on the Edge website. However, what the reporters failed to notice in that article is that Elon Musk was actually in the same photo too. You can see Jeffrey Epstein sitting at the same table as Zach Bogue of Montara Capital Partners, and just 5 meters away from Epstein is Elon Musk. Musk was attending the event alongside his then wife, Tallulah Musk. Elon and Tallulah had married the year before the event in question, and they divorced a year after. Here you go. This is the picture. I can confirm for the first time that there, you can see, same angle, same door, same shadow, one table behind, that's the table behind them, wearing the same jacket, same haircut, same shirt. It is Elon Musk right by there. It is Jeffrey Epstein right by there. That's probably 2.5 meters at most. 2.5 meters at most. 25 odd people at the event. So here is a photo showing Jeffrey Epstein and Elon Musk in the same room at a very small event, select event. Brockman was in attendance alongside his son, Max Brockman, who was managing Brockman Inc. Nathan Myhrvold, Jeff Bezos, and Sergey Brin were also in attendance. Salah Kamanga represented YouTube. Reporter David Brooks was there for the New York Times, and even musician Peter Gabriel was noted amongst the attendees at the dinner. Jeffrey Epstein had become significantly more low profile after his prison term, so he's not officially listed as an attendee at the event, but he was there, as we can see from one of the blurry photos taken at the dinner by Nathan Myhrvold and published on edge.org. Although this photo shows Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein at the same Edge event, there was more to find. Tracing Elon Musk's involvement with Edge, while it was almost fully funded by Jeffrey Epstein, leads us to a much more significant and worrying course. The standardization of government-sponsored psychological operations to systematically manipulate an unwitting public. Elon Musk's training in psychological manipulation funded by Epstein. The psychological manipulation of the masses via various intelligence-linked programs is well documented. The officially sanctioned government-led programming of general population is not a conspiracy theory. It has become accepted by many as a mainstream method to enact control. Such abhorrent and underhand manipulation used to be resigned to the realm of secretive and subversive intelligence programs or campaigns run by major PR companies, but that changed abruptly once Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein took their brand of behavioral economics on the road. This is Newshound number 20. The behavioral insight team is here inside your mind. This is about the unit we're going to be speaking about. This is about Richard Thaler. You'll understand this now. It was the Democratic Party under Barack Obama which first welcomed the creators of what they were eventually termed nudge units into the White House. This led to government-attached units set up to subtly nudge people into changing their behavior on behalf of those who wish to control the future direction of society. In the United Kingdom, Richard Thaler also found a friend in David Cameron and his Conservative Party administration, and they soon created what was termed the Behavioral Insight Unit in the United Kingdom. The British government during this period were already ahead of Thaler in many regards. In 2004, Tony Blair's New Labour produced a paper entitled Personal Responsibility and Changing Behaviour, the State's Knowledge and its Implications for Public Policy. Within this fascinating example of the government overstepping what may be considered appropriate to the electorate, part of the paper reviews the growing body of knowledge about alternative and perhaps more subtle ways in which government might affect personal behavior. The paper concludes that the use of behavioral change would be positive for government policy, stating, looking to the future, there is an evident need to strengthen our theoretical and empirical understanding of what drives behavior and behavioral change. Just as important will be the wider testing out of policy tools to develop a more sophisticated toolkit for policymakers. Policy should not simply proclaim personal responsibility or blame, but needs to be shaped around the ways in which people actually think and feel, and the social and psychological forces that influence behaviour. It wasn't only the Tory government which was cooing at Richard Thaler. In a Guardian article from the 12th of July 2008 entitled From Obama to Cameron, Why Do So Many Politicians Want a Piece of Richard Thaler? New Labour's Richard Reeves is also noted as desperate to get Thaler on board, with Aditya Chakraborty writing, there was a time when Labour would have been all over Thaler and Downing Street, would have pulled him in for a chat. Now it's the other side that are showing they're up for new ideas, says former government advisor Richard Reeves. Sadly, that tells you where the intellectual energy is in British politics. Reeves had taken it upon himself to organise a dinner next Tuesday with Thaler and some government advisors and think tankers from the centre-left. After Richard Thaler, described as the father of behavioral economics, published his book in 2008 entitled Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth and Happiness, those who wanted to manipulate people's behavior began to flock to him. It wasn't only Cameron and Obama who understood how the study of behavioral economics could be applied generally to change the behavior of general population. This was the perfect tool to systematically manufacture consent amongst the voting population and, if applied industrially, had the potential to change the entire world. This is from the UK Labour Party's paper, Personal Responsibility and Change Behaviour. It shows some of the things, the cost effectiveness of alternative methods of behavioural change, shifting understanding of personal responsibility, political pressures to sharpen and extend conditional benefits, wealth complexity and diversity challenge one size fits all, desire to enhance personal responsibility and individual control. These are all very interesting ways to change behavior. So they were already kind of on board of this. Brockman and Epstein saw many benefits in Thaler's teaching. They had certain aspects of total technological control covered. They had the ear of many of the world leaders. They had introduced the third wave politics of the future into the main public arena, with its creator Anthony Giddens also being involved in Edge. But they were yet to figure out how to manufacture the consent of the voting population efficiently. This was where Thaler's newly created strain of behavioral economics came into play. Behavioral economics was the establishment's best hope for achieving change among regular people. Most importantly, without those targeted realizing how or why they were being manipulated. In 2008, Thaler was an attendee at the San Francisco dinner held by Edge, but this wouldn't be his only involvement with Brockman and Epstein's organization. Thaler also went to Edge specifically to train an extremely select group of Edge members in his newly developed branch of psychological operations. In October 2008, Edge hosted a course funded by Jeffrey Epstein, which focused on his new form of behavioral science. Richard Thaler and Sandel Munhafen, a professor of economics at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, designed the six-part course themselves. Here you can see me and Joe Allen discuss. I put forward I posit the question, is Elon Musk the manufactured antithesis of the establishment? And Joe Allen bats on the other side, though he is sympathetic to the view, that's for sure. This course was designed to be a masterclass, something which the Edge website claimed was the most recent iteration of Edge's development and had begun the previous year. The first Edge masterclass of 2008 was called Libertarian Paternalism: Why It's Impossible Not to Nudge, while the second in the masterclass series was entitled Improving Choices with Machine Readable Disclosure. The second part of the Edge Masterclass saw only 8 Edge members in attendance: Jeff Bezos, Nathan Myhrvold, Salah Kamanga, Daniel Kahneman, Danny Hillis, Paul Romer, Elon Musk, and Sean Parker, while the third part also saw George Dyson and Franz Leclerc join in. This wasn't a random group of thinkers. These were some of the most powerful movers and shakers in the digital world. This Edge event saw the leading experts in behavioral economics training the very top echelons of Google, Amazon, YouTube, SpaceX, Intellectual Ventures, Facebook, and Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. Alongside Thaler and Muller-Nathan, Daniel Kahneman is one of the leading experts in not only behavioral economics, but also cognitive psychology and the processes behind judgment and decision making. Thaler and Kahneman started working together in the 1970s when Thaler arrived at Stanford. Kahneman also had a close business relationships with Richard Thaler by sitting on the board of Fuller and Thaler Asset Management, Inc. The attendees of his Edge Masterclass would soon become the most powerful people in the world, more powerful than any president, prime minister, or king. Paul Romer is an American economist and policy entrepreneur who later became chief economist for the World Bank in 2016 and eventually shared a Nobel Prize in economics alongside William Nordhaus. The year before the Edge event in question, Salah Kamanga replaced the founder of YouTube, Chad Hurley, as CEO of YouTube, and in February 2014, he left the company. Kamanga was replaced as CEO at YouTube by another staunch Edge regular, Suzanne Wojcicki. Danny Hillis had previously worked at Disney and had co-founded Apple Applied Minds, but by this time he had founded MetaWeb Technologies, which was later acquired by Google. The infamous creator and Napster, Sean Parker, was already invested in Facebook by this point. However, maybe more notably, Parker had become a managing partner at Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, a San Francisco-based venture capital fund. The founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, was already a powerful mover and shaker by 2008, while Nathan Myhrvold's Intellectual Ventures controlled almost 70,000 patents and patent pendings at its peak. The third Jeffrey Epstein-funded masterclass in the series, which Elon Musk attended, was entitled The Psychology of Scarcity. And it began when Sendil Muller-Nathan quote that suggests they were imagining how to benefit from impoverished population, stating, "Let's put aside poverty alleviation for a second and let's ask, is there something intrinsic to poverty that has value and that is worth studying in and of itself?" One of the reasons that this is the case is that purely aside from magic bullets, we need to understand are there unifying principles under conditions of scarcity that can help us understand behavior and to craft intervention. If we feel that conditions of scarcity evoke certain psychology, then that, not to mention pure scientific interest, will affect a vast majority of interventions. It's an important and old question. The United Kingdom's behavioral insight teams have been used to coerce the population during the coronavirus pandemic, with the Nudge Unit coordinating closely with the Department of Health and Social Care in crafting the government response. The Institute for Government noted the Nudges unit's use of disgust as an incentive to wash hands and the suggestion of singing happy birthday to ensure hands are washed for the requisite 20 seconds. Those were both nudge ideas. Newshound number 7 here is Elon Musk, his start of his career. His time at Zip2Net and his earlier career is well worth a watch. Regardless of how powerful the majority of the attendees of Richard Thaler's masterclass in behavioral psychology were, Elon Musk was the real rising star in this room. Officially, Musk represented SpaceX and Tesla, But his growing business portfolio, alongside his wealth, power, and influence, had increased exponentially ever since. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, he made his intentions for the future direction of the app clear. Musk intends to turn X.com into the Western equivalent of WeChat in an everything app, which will not only be the biggest social media platform in the world, but will also be a payment platform from where you'll be able to manage your money, bills, shopping, and much more. The development of X is fundamentally a prescient step towards what Musk perceives as an inevitable new paradigm. The psychological manipulation of the public via powerful social media platforms won't only be used to reap potential economic benefits for those in control of sites like X, Facebook, or Google. They will be used by government to sway popular opinion too. So, as Elon Musk crosses the proverbial Rubicon from being someone who is in direct control of a platform which has the potential to create mass social change onto government, big questions must be asked. Exacting behavioral change. In this article, I will attempt to briefly describe the breadth of what is termed behavioral economics. But once you begin researching this subject, one thing becomes extremely clear. Everything we do, every action we take, and every decision we make is encompassed by behavioral economics. It's not simply a case of nudging people's behavior concerning purchases or credit cards. You can use these techniques to create a range of behavioral changes in people outside of economics too. To a behavioral economist, people's actions are mappable. Everyone is driven by a mental model, and altering their mental model will, in turn, change their behavior by giving their target specific stimuli designed to nudge them into choosing an alternative option. During the third class of the 2008 Edge course, Myhrvold describes it like this. It's about how there's a large set of programs where we're trying to encourage behavioral change in some form. And one of the underlying themes that emerges, that unifies them, is can we effectively elicit the mental model people operate with and then use that to then create behavioral change? It's a structured way to think about behavioral change literature. One of the aforementioned attendees, Daniel Kahneman, a leading expert in cognitive psychology and the processes behind judgment and decision making, recognized the psychological potential of this technology, stating on Edge, what we're seeing is that there is a technology emerging from behavioral economics. It's not only an abstract thing, you could do things with it. We are just at the beginning. I thought that the input of psychology into behavioral economics was done, but here in Sendell was very encouraging because there was a lot of new psychology in there. That conversation is continuing, and it looks to me as if that conversation is going to go forward. It's pretty intuitive, based on research, good theory, and important. Although we believe ourselves to be somewhat discerning when making tough decisions, human behavior is very predictable and ergo easy to manipulate. A lot of behavioral economics is data driven. It's as simple as if we are confronted with our data output in a certain way, we will often choose to make different decisions. The more information they have about you, the more they can design their nudges to best sway your behavior, whether you want them to or not. And that is the crux of behavioral economics. The more information they have about you, the easier it is to manipulate you into making certain decisions. That's Richard Thaler there, looking on, courtesy of The Guardian. It was actually on an Indian website as well. When Thaler and Sunstein officially went on the road in 2008 to convince people of the vast potential of nudge theory, they weren't shy about its potential to overstep previously unspoken red lines. In Boston Globe article on the 2nd of March 2008, written by Drake Bennett, entitled When Shove Comes to Push, Bennett states, Thaler, Sunstein, and other similar-minded thinkers argue that this approach it has a panoply of applications. Besides improving people's financial and energy habits, it could restructure health insurance and medical care. In the social realm, some economists are experimenting with contracts to get people to lose weight. In their book, Thaler and Sunstein even suggest changes to the marriage contract. After they had released Nudge, Thaler and Sunstein wrote articles in several papers setting out their stall. In the Chicago Tribune on the 6th of April 2008, Thaler and Sunstein wrote an article entitled A Gentle Prod to Go Green. The Behavioral Tinkerers wrote, Behavioral economics is an exciting new field that combines standard economics with an understanding of human psychology. From the standpoint of behavioral economics, it is important to focus on both the economic and the psychological aspects of the climate change problem. The economic aspect has to do with people's incentives. Neither big companies nor individual consumers are required to pay their full share of the environmental costs they impose on everyone else. In reality, within behavioral economics, as practiced by Thaler and Sunstein, the general public is unwittingly convinced to accept the final bill for whatever policies those in power wish to enact. Whenever the politicians in power think they know better than everyone else, they are free to systematically manipulate the general public via subversive psychological methods. In fact, some of Thaler and Sunstein's teachings interfere unduly with personal choice, the very definition of the nanny state. Thaler and Sunstein referred to their branch of psychology as libertarian paternalism, and they saw the desire to nudge as a natural part of capitalist system. In an article written by Thaler and Sunstein for the Los Angeles Times on the 2nd of April 2008 entitled Designing Better Choices, it states, we find ourselves these days mired in political battles that pit laissez-faire capitalism with its reliance on unrestricted free markets against heavily regulated capitalism, which favors government mandates and bans in efforts to ensure good outcomes. But this opposition is false and misleading. Any system of free markets which includes some kind of choice architecture, and that means libertarian paternalism, can offer a real third way around the battleground. However, to make this third way viable, Thaler and Sunstein have not only had to redefine psyops as behavioral economics, they have also redefined some humans as something they call econs. These are predictable, rational actors whose behavior is extremely influenced by sudden economic change. Thaler and Sunstein mention econs a lot during Nudge, separating them from the humans who require nudging. Econs respond primarily to incentives. If the government taxes candy, they will buy less candy. But they are not influenced by such irrelevant factors as the order in which the options are displayed. Humans respond to incentives too, but they are also influenced by nudges. By properly deploying both incentives and nudges, we can improve people's lives and help solve many of society's major problems, and we can do so while still insisting on everyone's freedom to choose. It is clear that Thaler and Sunstein attempt to redefine what it means to be human. For them, humans need to be cajoled to make them act as the ruling class would like them to act. They clearly believe that humans would make worse decisions than econs if they were left to their own devices, but in turn, that is based on the presupposition that the government always makes better decisions than the general population. It's true that some of the reasons why humans make poor decisions is due to a lack of specific information. However, like with the psychology of scarcity in relation to poverty, the unspoken issue here is actually concerning the psychology of scarcity concerning information. If everyone were given access to all information from the start, then people would make better choices about who they were governed by and how society is constructed, or, in this case, constricted. The digital panopticon is fueled by the control of information, as with Bentham's design of the hypothetical panopticon prison. In Thaler's world, the state has access to all the information they require to nudge us, while the general public is denied accurate information systematically. This manufactured information scarcity is not only a tool which the government uses to coerce our behavior and decision making, it has also become a commonly used tool of the biggest social media organizations and search engines. Musk now owns one of the biggest social media platforms in the world, and the amount of data his company can harvest about each user is excessive. They know what you watch, what you like, what you share, your private messages, and a growing selection of individual data sets which will allow them to build mental models of each individual. At the same time, Peter Thiel's Palantir is also growing its data sets on individuals, while YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, and Google are doing alike. These organizations are blatantly guilty of systematically controlling, hiding, and censoring information from their users. Here is another of Peter Thiel's colleagues, Eric R. Weinstein, was also a member of Epstein and Brockman's Edge. This is my news hound about Eric R. Weinstein's hidden history, designing flagship economic migration programs for the United Nations. It's a good one. At the moment, we are providing major companies with masses of our personal information daily, and in return, they are profiling us in more ways than one. That massive data we supply to these companies allows them to control almost every action we take without us even realizing it's happening. The next step is for artificial intelligence to be programmed to systemize this mechanism further, until the vast majority of our decisions are controlled by our personal devices. Look who's nudging now. Behavioral nudge units are not anything new, but conventionally, those who would use our psychology against us have tended to act from the shadowy realm of clandestine intelligence operations, with their actions regarded as underhand by most. However, since Richard Thaler came on the scene, this murky branch of behavioral psychology has been rebranded as an everyday tool ready to be utilized by those who seek to govern. The act of nudging behavior en masse is a form of psychological manipulation that is already being used by our military and police forces to influence people's emotions, beliefs, and behavior. The term psyops is being rebranded as nudging, allowing it to be slowly but surely adopted by governments worldwide as a legitimate way to control the actions of the global population. And it isn't only governments that will be enthusiastically adopting this tried and tested technique. The most effective way to use such psychological manipulation will be online, and it will be our personalized data sets that will be used to design how best to nudge us individually. This is Newshound number 11, the Musk Files, Mummy and Daddy Musk, where you learn about her PR time of selling potato chips that make you stream diarrhea. No word of a lie. Alestra. There is no doubt that various online companies will use this technology to control more than just what we purchase. For this reason, it shouldn't be as surprising that Bezos, Musk, Brin, and their ilk have been trained in mass behavioral psychology. What should be much more of a surprise is that they were learning such techniques via a course funded by an elite child trafficking intelligence asset like Jeffrey Epstein. It's hard to surprise most onlookers nowadays, partly because we have already entered the era of fifth generation warfare, and that may be why such pernicious science is being so readily welcomed by governments and technocrats worldwide. It is no coincidence that behavioral economics is emerging now, just as centralized digital panopticon takes shape around us, brought to fruition by the likes of Thiel, Musk, Gates, Bezos, and Brin. Elon Musk may be the wealthiest and most powerful person on earth, and because of his investments, his wealth will likely increase at an exponential rate. Many of Musk's supporters are fanatical. Many of them idolize him, while some of that energy is synthetically driven by technology which uses focused behavioral nudging to improve Musk's PR image. For the potential future technocratic leaders to create the world of tomorrow, a step towards governance is required, and Musk is now making his move. We have seen a sudden lurch towards technocracy during the 2024 election, signaled by J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk becoming major political players and getting one step closer to being part of the government. Another of Epstein's associates, who I've covered extensively, has also become a colleague of Elon Musk recently. Nicole Junkermann, the German entrepreneur, was invested in the Israeli Unit 8200 startup company Carver 911 alongside Jeffrey Epstein, Peter Thiel, and former Israeli PM Ehud Barak. Junkermann became part of SpaceX after selling her Swarm satellite company to Musk's Starlink. As well as her business links with Epstein, Nicole Junkermann had previously ridden on the Lolita Express on two separate occasions, which included a secretive meeting in the UK, reportedly with two US senators at Wexner's Foxcote House. For almost a century, Technocracy Inc. has been on the rise. Elon Musk's maternal grandfather, Joshua Norman Haldeman, was a director of Technocracy Incorporated, which, like the Edge Foundation, was originally founded in New York. Technocracy Incorporated was created in the 1930s, and either ironically or presciently, politicians and members of political parties were not permitted to become members. Even though they barred politicians, at the same time, the organization desired a radical restructuring of political, social, and economic life in Canada, something which led them to becoming labeled as subversive to the war effort and banned during World War II. Regardless, as technological sophistication has increased, so has its ability to mold society. What we're currently seeing is an attempt to create a third culture of sorts. There may be no better example of an effort to synthesize social science and formal science than technocrats like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance taking control of the levers of political power. The third culture has been bubbling away for a long time. In the era of Musk's grandfather, it had been inconceivable that political science and formal science could work together. Snow had recognized the dilemma, and he was the first to properly define the communication issues between the humanities and the natural sciences. Brockman took a step further and decided, as many others who are engrossed by purely binary conundrum do, that there could be a potential third way to go about things. The third culture is very much like third way politics. The practitioners of the third way politics purge the extremities of their party to gain power. However, once in power, the claim that solutions reside in the center of politics is soon discovered to be illusory. In relation, the third culture can only be attempted by those who believe they can bridge a gap between a divide that can never be connected. If you design the social sciences based on practical sciences, then you'll soon discover that humanness is inextricably lost, or humaneness. That's what a world designed by rational scientists looks like. It's authoritarian. It knows best, and if it can control us with physics, then it'll control us physically. The third culture is an attempt to deny humanity, or at least the humanities. Third way politics pushes perpetual warfare, austerity, and poverty upon us, nudging us into the arms of an unforgiving and unethical form of governance. In the future, the technocrats will be in charge, whether you like it or not. They will be the chosen few who will program the algorithms that drive every part of our society. In reality, a society where humans relinquish control over to technological science itself is the real third culture to come. There are many questions that arise from studying these outrageously subversive technocrats, but one of the most important questions may be, what is Edge? This is an organization where the technocratic rulers of the here and now designed our future bit by bit. Edge is where the people in charge of almost every part of the online world are trained. Sergey Brin trained in course after course at Edge. Jeff Bezos trained in course after course at Edge. Nathan Myhrvold, Salah Kamanga, Elon Musk all attended an elite organization where everyone involved is now in complete control of our existence. Should we not point at these events and exclaim that Edge could be a function of a grander conspiracy? What is to stop someone from positing that the people involved in Edge are designing not only our systems, our politics, our poverty, but even our very culture? While we look at the people who took part in these Jeffrey Epstein-funded events as individuals, it states quite clearly that they were representing their companies at the highest levels. We shouldn't lose sight of the implications of this fact. It's not only individuals conspiring together at Edge, it's Google, YouTube, Amazon, Twitter, X, Thiel's Founders Fund, Facebook, Tesla, and SpaceX. It was these giant corporations which were central to figuring out something very fundamental: how to control a population during the digital age. And all of those individuals, as well as the companies they represented, should have to answer for being part of a clear conspiracy. As voters in a democracy, we should also be asking some pertinent questions in particular. Do we want a government which does what we say, or do we want a government which wants us to do what they say? If you can be systematically manipulated by a powerful social media platform, should those who own such platforms be allowed to govern us politically too? And most importantly, are we really free? Elon Musk is a manufactured persona, 100 years in the making, and you should not view him through a mimetic lens. He wields tangible levels of power. He has extremely questionable associations with deep state apparatus, and he has the capability to sway people's opinion by using subversive and unseen means. I can understand why people follow him. I can see what they see. The only difference between the supporter of Elon Musk and I is information and data. I am making my decision because I have extra information and data about Elon Musk, whereas Musk supporters are often making their decision because Elon Musk's platform has extra information and data about them, and it's being used to nudge them into becoming true believers. They're using our own information and data against us as a psychological weapon. Whether you accept it or not, we are in a state of psychological warfare right now. The technocrats are not our friends. They have an agenda to perpetually nudge us towards their preferred form of multipolar globalism without us noticing, leading us to the doors of our prison cells within their carefully curated digital panopticon. There you go. That's Musk and Epstein, the Third Culture, by myself, Johnny Vedmore. To produce independent investigative articles such as this, Johnny Vedmore needs your support. Join Johnny Vedmore's Patreon to drop him some funds via Buy Me a Coffee or Ko-Fi. Those links are all just down there underneath. You can see Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, Ko-Fi. You click any of these, you'll go over to my business and you can help support this type of work. Newshound 28 will be here when the article goes up proper. So there will be, in this article, there will be the read through and there'll be me exploring the evidence completely entirely. So if you want to now go and explore the source materials, all those links that link to prove the information of what I'm saying, I like to go through that in detail so you know that I am acting on best out of my, I'm acting faithfully. And so I like to go through all of the source information and I like to look at everything in detail. And so it's about 2 hours, 20 minutes long, and it's a good exploration. Newshounds are always pretty fun. In this edition of Newshound, Johnny Vedmore explores the source material behind his news-paced article, Musk and Epstein, the Third Culture. This article revealed how Elon Musk was trained to manipulate the psychology of the masses via a Jeffrey Epstein-funded program led by Richard Thaler, the father of infamous psychological nudge units. You can also find ways to support me here. And again, right down at the bottom of the page or the top of the page, you can find links to my Buy Me a Coffee, become a Patreon, Ko-Fi, or other links. Seriously, becoming a patron, you'll get the work early. You get to support my work, and literally, if I can get up to a point where I can not even make I'm not even after making like a decent living, just a living. If I can make just a living out of this, then I will be working full time in investigating and finding the information that most people can't find and that seems lost in this site, which is Newspaste. And you can read the kind of the start of this dossier, of this article within here too. Um, Now, just to say, within this article, I did say at the top, like all of these video links that are throughout it, which aren't loading up yet because I've just reloaded the page and everything's slow today. All of the things that load up one by one, these are all extra content for you to peruse. I explore the World Economic Forum's mega cities and other things within the article. Well, they're not up at the moment because I'm on a preview page. You can't click back on a preview page. And it is a extremely exciting article, The Third Culture. Well, that was exciting to go through. Um, when I do these articles, when I do the read throughs, these are right at the beginning. There's still a couple of like little bits and bobs. It's like it's really good to read through them because I could do draft after draft, send them away to someone else to have a look at. But still, I notice like little errors throughout it. I mean, an article with 8,000 plus words that's written in a few weeks is pretty much going to have a couple of bits where you have to keep like looking at it over and over again. But I'm pretty proud of it. It's got over 20 hours of independent material and content that's specifically related to the things within this article. And that's, I mean, my articles, I'm trying to make them more than just a read. They're an exploration of the subject. I don't want you to be like, oh look, now I know this. I've read it and I'm going on. I want you to be able to explore each part of it fundamentally in a way. So, you know, the bits on I got a news hound on Richard Thaler and the behavioral insight team. That's really worth going through how that developed and what was being said about it. We go through the press, we go through lots of newspaper cuttings and lots of information. You see the British side of it, you see how it was implemented into government. There's a lot of sources within the article. In actual fact, within that article, linking up different things, including just like the names of people to their edge pages, so you could click on them, like it's Karamanga and people like that. There is about 120 plus sources within the article. That's pretty, it sounds pretty excessive, but all of them were related in some way. All of them were really important. That in actual fact, if you explored the entire article, it'd probably take you a couple of months. And by the end of it, you'd come out with a really good understanding of the situation that's going on in the world. Now it's funny how like the training of leadership groups is something that I do. I look into. It's one of the things I investigate. So I looked into the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders course in the same way I'm looking at these edge courses and watching them train up the technocratic leaders. So I see in the Kissinger's International Seminar them training people like Schwab and people and Pierre Trudeau and other people who were the last generations of politicians who were well old now. And those people then created the next stage of the training programs, which saw people like Justin Trudeau go through, Boris Johnson, Tony Blair, etc., 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 and they become much more industrial by this point. Now that there is an elite that are being trained that are of the cybernetic realm. They're the technocrats, and they were trained back in the noughties. They were trained on how the future is going to look, and the future is going to be inhumane. As we go more towards technology, we will lose humanity, and they just see that as a sell-off that they can do. They don't mind that. That's just the way it's going to be because we're going to introduce this technology, whether you like it or not. That's the way they see it. To find a link between Epstein and Musk was amazing. To find such a link, I could say it was not surprising, but also surprising. It was a shock. I'd already felt like I had been leading there. I'd already done work on Epstein. I've already done work on Musk, and then I go and look at what Epstein and Musk's doing on this Epstein-funded course with Bezos and others. And it turns out he's attending a course which is about someone else I study, Richard Thaler, and the psychological behavioral insight teams and the nudge units. So it seemed like it just all came together. And then in amongst it is Peter Thiel. I've done lots of different work that's related to that, and loads of other parts of it. But really, this goes the same. This is the training of if people want to find the beginning of a conspiracy. This is the beginning of a conspiracy. This is the moment that the technocratic elite were trained in how to control society, in how to control a futuristic society that's based around cybernetics. And the people who had developed the idea that this was what the future needed were people like Brockman and others. And Epstein recognized it. You know, people ridicule Epstein as some sort of caricature now, some evil sort of vampire guy. He was a very astute guy. Maybe not intelligent, not a moral, ethical, or human intelligence like we would say humane intelligence. I'd say it was a different type of intelligence, of course, but he was astute. He knew when something was going to make money, when something was going to be worth his time, and he knew the future, and he knew technology was where it was at. A lot of people do. The people who know where technology is where it's at become the richest in the world. Why? So Epstein put his tentacles around all of the most powerful people in the world, and they were training the people who are in charge right now. All of the people who are in charge of, who have molded the policies and been in charge for years of Google, of YouTube, of Facebook, of X, Twitter, all of them, they have all been going through, funneled through the top levels, gone through this Jeffrey Epstein funded course, including Elon Musk. And there you go. Now it's out in the open. So, thank you for joining me. Like I say, I need your help. There's ways to support me. Buy me a coffee, even if you buy me just a couple of coffees. I can't even tell you how much that helps, Becoming a Patreon and you get stuff in advance early. I don't know what the future holds, but I'd really prefer to have an independent focus on concentrating on the articles I think are most important, because so far that's worked out to explain a hell of a lot of history that was previously unknown. And this is another step towards revealing something. It's very interesting that Eric R. Weinstein had links in the same way, and the third way politics and all of that. I'm on this road where, as I go along, I do uncover other things and other associations. And, I'm very good at being able to, if I'm astute at anything, I'm astute at recognizing where the actual road is leading and where to follow, rather than, what's trending at the time. I'm not into what's trending at the time. But this one has come just at the right time. Just as Musk, a technocrat, decides to attempt to step into his role in governance. And loads of questions need to be asked. Loads of questions need to be asked. When people with that much power are heading towards politics, we're heading towards something different. This isn't the past. This isn't the present. This entering into a future dynamic that is predictable. It's predictable because there's been a massive technological shift. There's been a political, social, economic structure put in. There's been leadership groups created to focus on what the future is going to be. And now they're all in the control of the levers of power that allow them to psychologically manipulate the masses into agreeing with whatever they say. Here we are. If you want to know how we got to the place where we seem like we have no control and everything is always an elite who are unreachable, untouchable, and heading towards globalism, this is the world they're creating. This is the world of the technocracy. You may think, if you think that Elon Musk is a hero, you got to realize he's just a stepping stone. He's a stepping stone to somewhere else. And he's not telling you the truth, is he? While he right now, literally this week, I hear him talk about, all the past couple of weeks, I hear him talk about the Epstein client list. Is he on the Epstein client list? He's part of a major course. I hear him talking about how the New York Times is the enemy. He was doing the courses with David Brooks of the New York Times. Google, YouTube have been terrible to him. He was doing these courses. They're all trained together. They're all hang out together, and they all put on the pretense together. And that's the pretense that they're not really in charge while they're in charge. And they're in charge of being able to increase their public image so that everybody loves them, or at least the majority love them. And that's why it's so dangerous to be entering towards governance. And like I say, thank you for taking the time to hear this information. Support, go to newspace.com. You can find me around the place. Newspace podcast goes up usually every Thursday. Friday this week, rare one that I would do it slightly different. It goes up on the podcast on Thursday this week, audio, but the videos will be going up on Friday so that it doesn't get in the way of this release. And like I say, support the work. Love you. Thanks for joining me. Bye.
Shaping a great reset for the post-corona era.